Okay guys, so today we're going to do a kind of mini person photo edit. So we're going to take a picture of a figure, crop it out and put it onto an image so it looks like the object is large and the person small. So to start with, I'm going to select my image of the person by pressing Ctrl A to select the whole image, and you'll see dotted lines appear around the outside. Then Ctrl C to copy. And then I'm going to click onto the picture I want to put it onto and press Control and V to paste. Okay, the image is bigger than I want it, so Control T, and I'm going to resize it, dragging from the corner until I think the scale looks about right. You can always hover over the edges and you can rotate if you want to, but don't drag from the top or the sides because that can stretch or kind of squash the image. Okay, the scale looks pretty good at the moment, so I'm going to press Enter. And then we're going to click on the remove background option down here. And Photoshop's going to add a layer mask and remove the background using the layer mask. So once it's finished, what you can see down here in the layer palette on the right hand side is we've got a layer of our small person. Next to it we've got a layer mask, and wherever that is black, so all the background's gone, where it's white we can see the figure shown through. Okay, normally when Photoshop does this, it does a pretty good job, but it's not always perfect. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to correct any mistakes or anything I think needs adjusting. So if you press Control plus, that'll zoom in. Control minus zooms out again. So in particular, I'm looking at this area around the shoes. So we can see it's left a little, it's either left too much of a shoe and the shadow underneath it, which just cropped a little bit off around the edge, probably where the white sheet is. So I'm going to tidy up that line. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my layer mask, and then I'm going to click on the polygon lasso tool up here on the left hand side. I'm going to make sure the feather is set to 1 pixel at the top here. So what that's going to do is just make the edge of the picture slightly blurred when I crop it out. And then I'm going to plot a path. So I'm going to clip around the edge of a shoe. The more points I plot, the more accurate it's going to look. So all I'm trying to do is take off those square edges on the bottom of the shoe there. So the shape at least looks a little bit smoother. Every time I'm happy with the selection, I just go back to the start and join up. And then I'm going to fill this area now on the layer mask with black paint. Okay, so fill with black, and that area has disappeared. I'm going to continue now and do the same over here. Again, I'm going to work in sections, so I'm going to get rid of these bits first. Try and plot a smooth line around the base of her foot there. Okay, edit and fill, or I can just click on the paint bucket here and fill with black. Okay, and I'm going to select deselect. I'm going to zoom in again, so Control plus. And what I want to get rid of now are these little bits in between the 2 feet. So there's just a bit of sort of grey sheet left here. When you're clipping out anything like this, I'd zoom right in and I'd clip just inside the line of the bit that you kind of want to keep. So I'm clipping, I'm putting my points just inside the edge of a shoe so I don't end up with a white border around it. Again, I could do this quickly, just plot a couple of points, but it's going to look like I've cut it out really roughly. So the more time I take over this, the better it's going to look. Okay, so then I'm just going to scan around the rest of the image and see if there's anything else I think Photoshop hasn't done a very good job of. So far so good. So the rest of that looks pretty good. Sometimes what you might find is Photoshop's taking away too much. So as well as leaving bits behind, it might also take away too much of the image. If it's done that, so if you want to say bring back a bit of shoe, then you would create a path around the outside. So I'm going to create a path through, around the inside here, and then I'd fill this area with white to kind of bring through whatever was missing from there. Okay, I'm just going to deselect because I don't need to do that. Okay, so we're going to zoom out. So Control minus, take a look at our picture again. So far it looks pretty good. I'm just going to think a little more carefully about placement. So I'm just going to move the figure over to the right a little bit, and maybe an experiment with maybe up or down according to what sort of height I think works best. I can always shrink down this. I think I might shrink down the size of the figure a little bit. So that now is feeling pretty good. Okay, so what we want to add next is a little bit of shadow underneath the figure to stop it looking like it's just floating there. So to do that, I'm going to click onto the layer now, and I'm going to use this tool, the Magic Wand tool. So this will work if the background is roughly or mostly one colour. So the Magic Wand tool, the tolerances are quite high at the top here. And I'm just going to click anywhere on what I think is a white background. So what you should be able to see is it's selected most of this area here. It's missed the bit of the sheet at the bottom, probably because it's got a few different colours in it. So I'm going to click in that area, and again, and you can see it's selecting more of those bits. I'm just going to keep going, holding down Shift key to get rid of any extra bits I think I need to. And then I'm going to click on the area around the background as well. Try and get rid of it, most of those points. The cleaner this is, the better. There's some bits inside the arms and the legs, which it hasn't quite caught, so I'm going to zoom in. Zoom in as much as you think you need to get those bits. So holding Shift again, click, click, and you can select multiple parts in. I don't need to be overly precise with this, so it's really important to remember it's not got to be perfect. All I want is something that is kind of roughly the shape of the figure without spending too much time on it. So there's some bits where it just hasn't quite caught it all, but I could spend ages trying to faff around with those bits now, or I could sort of correct that later. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out. So what we've got now is we've used a Magic Wand tool, and what it's selected is everything apart from the figure. So it's selected a space around it. What we want to do is select just a figure. So all we're going to do is go to the top and select and inverse, which is going to reverse the selection. So now what we should see is the dotted lines are mostly around the figure. It's picked up a few little bits around here, but we can sort that out in a minute. That's perfect. Right, I'm going to create a new layer now. So layer, new layer. Okay, and I'm going to fill that selection now with black paint, So edit, fill, you could use a paint bucket tool. I'm going to select black. And what you should see now is we've got a shape of the outline of the figure just in black. So if I turn off those over two layers, you can see what we've got. Okay, there's a few bits we need to get rid of. So we could just use an eraser tool. And just going to use my bracket keys to make it a bit bigger. Select, deselect, first. Then get rid of those bits around the outside. So I could just tidy up that bit of shadow. and remove any unwanted bits. Again, it's important to remember this hasn't got to be perfect. So we've got something that looks roughly like the shape of our figure. Okay, what we want to do next is make it feel and look like a shadow. So to start with, I'm going to duplicate the layer. So I'm going to duplicate it. And then I'm going to just turn off one of those copies over here by clicking the eye icon. So I'm working on the copy above. I prefer to do this just in case I make a mistake, and then I can reverse that really easily. So next thing I'm going to do is edit, transform, and I'm going to use one of these transform options to make the shadow look like it's going at a more normal angle. So I'm going to try, you could try perspective or distort or skew, any of those would work. We'll start with perspective. And what I want the shadow to do is look like it's kind of running to the side. Again, kind of like a shadow would. And try a bit of distort and skew as well. Okay, so we've got something that kind of looks a bit like the shadow for the figure. Works pretty well. I'm going to press enter and apply that. Now, in terms of the layer order, we want this shadow to be behind the figure, so I'm going to move it back to here. So what I want, I'm going to zoom in, is for the shadow to look like it's under the feet here. Okay. Right, then we're going to duplicate the layer again. So I'm going to duplicate it. You could do this a couple of times so that you've got like some spares you can revert back to. Then I'm going to turn off the bottom one. And on this top one here, I'm going to blur it. So I'm going to go to filter, blur, and I'm going to add some Gaussian blur. Okay, on the first one, I'm going to add quite a lot of Gaussian blur. So as the shadow moves away from the source, so as the shadow, the top of the body is going to look more blurred than the shadow close to the feet and the legs. So I'm going to do one really blurred version, like so. Click OK. Then I'm going to turn off that layer, and then I'm going to do another version, filter, blur, same again, Gaussian blur. But this time I'm not going to blur it as much. So I've got a sharper version of a shadow and a not so sharp version. And it's just up to you to kind of pick what you think sort of looks about right. So something like this looks pretty good to me. Okay. Well, I'm going to move the position of it a little bit. So I'm going to turn both layers on. I'm going to click on the top one and hold shift, click on the bottom one, click on the move tool, and I'm just going to move them so that it feels like a better position. So I think if I put them about there, that's going to work pretty well. Okay, then we're going to add layer masks to both layers because we want to remove bits of a shadow on each one. So I'm going to start with the darkest one first here. So on this darkest layer, on the layer mask, I'm just going to use a paintbrush tool. I'm going to get rid of this bit of shadow around here to start with. Because obviously we don't want the shadow from the foot to look like it comes past the edge of the foot there. Okay, because the shadow as it moves away from the figure gets more blurred, I'm going to get rid of this area at the top here. Again, I'm going to use some black paint and remove that. And I'm going to lighten the shadow a little bit, so I'm just going to click on the opacity and make it a bit more transparent so it's not too dark, something like that. and I'm going to add my other one back on, and I'm going to do the same with this, but I'm going to remove the opposite section. So I'm going to remove this area down here, leave a blurred bit at the top where I've got rid of the other shadow. So I'm just going to paint on some black paint down the bottom. So my shadow goes from dark and more solid, less blurred, to more blurred. Again, I'm going to drop the opacity. Probably on this one I can go fainter as I move away from the figure. Go back to the other one and drop the opacity on that a little bit more. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So we've got shadow close to the legs, which is sharper, and we've got our shadow further away, which is more blurred and a little bit lighter as well. Okay, right, finally, I'm going to add one more layer at the bottom again now. So layer, new, and I'm just going to move that to the bottom of the shadow layers. It doesn't particularly matter. And I'm going to zoom in, and on this one I'm just going to add a bit of black paint using a soft paintbrush tool close to the feet, the bottom of the feet. So black paint, paintbrush tool, drop the size of the brush down. I want a soft brush, so the hardness down. I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow in really close to the edge of the feet. I think you don't want any here at the heel point, just at the point where the shoe is sort of in contact with the ground. And then the same over here. So it's just a thin, soft, sort of black line around that instep of the shoe, the sole of the shoe. Okay, and we've got a pretty good shadow. So we've got a mini person, a shadow to kind of help them feel a little bit more grounded. And that's kind of what we're after with our edit. What we could do now is possibly remove the background and add like a gradient fill on it as well. So I'm going to stop this video, show you how to do that on the next one.